All right, peoples, we're going with this one. This orientation, if you will, just because it seemed like I had it fixed the other times, and when I had it fixed the other times on the landscape mode, I checked the picture on YouTube and it wouldn't do regular landscape mode. It was sideways when it was supposed to be up, and it was up when it was supposed to be sideways. So we're eventually gonna get it right. But at this moment, we are going with, as we struggle stream here, we are going with, there we go, the upwards vertical here. But nonetheless, welcome to Scout Team Sports. I appreciate everyone who continues to support this channel as we continue to grow, continue to get through these growing pains here. Very exciting weekend, if you will, in my opinion. The NFL, the playoff picture continues to crystallize more and more to its permanent final form. And then, of course, we have the college football playoff, the last year of the Final Four format, if you will. Just go ahead and get it out of the way. I still think I am part of that crew that believes that Florida State got snubbed. They should be in the college football playoff. They should not be playing in an outside bowl, if you will, against Georgia. They were snubbed, and you can't talk about, well, without their quarterback that got injured, Jordan Poyer, that they're not one of the four best teams. Well, Ohio State got in with their third-string quarterback in the very first college football playoff after beating Michigan in the big game. And then with their third-string quarterback, they went through the semifinal round, won the national championship with the third-string quarterback. So why aren't you giving the second-string quarterback of Florida State the same opportunity? So, but we're off of that. Nothing we can do about it now. So we're going on to the matchups. We start off with Alabama at Michigan. They're playing at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Appreciate all my subscribers again for supporting me, and all those who are viewing and not subscribed. Please continue to share this with sports enthusiasts. I cover college football, NFL, and the NBA. Once we get more done with college football, then we'll start to infuse more NBA. But yes, Alabama and Michigan. Going through the stats are pretty much even, I would say, for the most part, when you talk about Alabama and Michigan. Points per game, 35 Alabama to Michigan, averaging 36. Alabama is slightly better in offense in terms of 252 passing yards average to Michigan's 230, and 172 rushing yards to Michigan's 161. But then you get to defense, and Michigan is better. Michigan only allows averaging 9.5 points a game to Michigan's. Michigan averages 9.5 points per game to Alabama's 18. They allow 170 passing yards to Alabama's 208, and then Michigan also allows only 87 rushing yards to Alabama's 124. So you can clearly see by the stats, and if you watched a couple of games, the strengths of both teams, for the most part, it would be Alabama's offense, if you're talking about this matchup, and then Michigan's defense. So you know what I always say, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, it's about the weakest links. So according to this, the weakest links would be the opposite matchup, which is Michigan's offense versus Bama's defense. Who would win that matchup, to me, would probably determine the outcome of the game. But there's another wrinkle in this, and that is the coaches. Nick Saban versus Jim Harbaugh. Of course, Jim Harbaugh coming off of the suspension, and his team winning a couple of games without him, including the big game. And so, of course, he was there for the Big Ten championship game. And, of course, they beat Iowa. And so now they're on into the college football playoff. For me, even though Bama doesn't deserve to be in, when it comes to Jim Harbaugh and if he can win this game, first of all, there was no reason Absolutely no reason why they should have lost to TCU last year in this same spot. College football playoff semifinal. No way they should have lost to TCU. Now you're facing Alabama. And they already showed how when the results came out, bowl selection time came out, and Michigan found out that they were facing Alabama, they showed the expression on Michigan's players' face of like the air had been let out of them because they were facing Alabama, and they probably figured they were going to face Florida State and probably thought we're going to face this backup quarterback and we're going to terrorize them. And now they're facing Alabama. Because, I mean, honestly, are you upset that are you really, as a Michigan team, you really only care about yourself? Are you upset that as Michigan, that Florida State got snubbed? No. You are upset that you are having to face Alabama. And that's why they had that facial expression like, because of who they were facing. They know they were in, but it was like, who are we facing? And yeah, that to me also, they might not have showed his face, but to me, and he might try to hide it with his stern, weird looking face that he always shows, but I think emotionally, the same thing happened to Jim Harbaugh. He's like, I got to face Nick Saban in the first round. In the first round of the semifinal. To me, Jim's got to prove it. He's got to prove it. He has gotten so close so many times. It's almost like they're becoming the Buffalo Bill, the early 1990s Buffalo Bills of college football. Always getting toward the end, but then falling short at the last moment, not making it. And I can't, it's hard for me to continue to try to believe in a team like that, believe in a coach like that, that they're going to, I'm not a Michigan fan, not an Alabama fan. I don't have a dog in the fight. But I'm going to go with who has proven that they can get there until you, as the one that continues to come up short, prove that you can get there. I'm going with the one who has proven that he can get there until you, as the one that continues to come up short, proves that you can get there. I really want a Michigan versus Washington national championship because I like seeing teams that haven't been around or haven't played for a national championship in a long time. We've seen Bama over and over again for the last, the course of the last decade. We've seen Bama all the time. If they're not winning it, they're in the game. If they're not in the game, they're at least contending to get into the game. And Texas, I at least can go back to, I remember the last time they were in was when Vince Young was quarterback and they beat USC for the national championship. So I can at least remember that and remember Texas being a prominent figure. They had some down years, had to get out of that. They've risen back up. Okay. But nonetheless, Texas has always been a powerhouse that you've always known. Once they are actually good, they're going to contend for a national championship. I want to see two teams. I've never seen Michigan in a national championship. The last time they were in a national championship, I wasn't even, I was born, but I didn't know what college football was yet. I couldn't comprehend it. So that's how long it's been. I was just starting to get my wheels up under me and starting to learn and understand and love football. I didn't know nothing about college. I wasn't even thinking about college at that time when I was 10. So, yeah. Michigan, they've got to prove it. To me, they have the team to be able to do it. And I am saying hi to Krish. I appreciate you, Krish, for joining in. Thank you, Krish. I am appreciating you joining in here as I am talking about the college football playoff here. And let's see, again, it's Alabama and Michigan that I'm talking about. But yeah, I really want to believe in Michigan, but they have to prove it to me. They have to prove it to me. And until they do, I'm going to take Bama. And I really don't want to take Bama because I don't want to see Bama in another national championship. I want to see Michigan versus Washington in the national championship. But you look at the stats are close. The averages are close. Alabama slightly better on offense, Michigan slightly better on defense. Those two will collide. Those strengths will collide. I think they'll neutralize each other. And it'll be up to Michigan's offense versus Bama's defense. I would say maybe Michigan in their offense has a slight edge over Bama's defense. But we got to see how the game goes. Again, to me, coaching and these two big-time marquee coaches play a big role in it. And until Jim Harbaugh can get over the hump, I'm not trusting him. I've trusted Harbaugh way too many times in predictions, and it's failed me every time. So I want to see him actually do it. So I'm hoping that Michigan wins, not for the sake of Harbaugh, but for the sake of Michigan and Michigan fans. I'm hoping that Michigan wins, but I can't pick them. I'm picking the team with the coach that's been there before, even though they don't deserve to be there this time. They've been there before. The team is strong enough to where they match up somewhat well against Michigan. There are a couple of deficiencies, but I think the coaching puts them over the top. I think Saban puts them over the top. So it really comes down to coaching, and it's Saban over Harbaugh until Harbaugh can prove otherwise. Took him how many years to finally beat Ohio State? And then when he did, now they're on a three-year streak. Well, you already are behind the 8 ball when it comes to getting into the college football playoff and coming up short when you were clearly, supposedly the better team, i.e. last year. And you see how far TCU has dropped off this year. So it's like, what happened? So, again, I'm hoping that Michigan wins, but I'm hoping Michigan wins, but it's hard. I got to pick Bama. Until they actually get over the hump, I have to pick Bama. So picking Bama in that one. And then we go to Texas Longhorns and Washington Huskies. I want to pick Washington. I really do. But it's not because they haven't, it's not because this one in particular is not because they haven't proven it, and they've gotten to the end and they've come up short like Michigan has. That's not the case. It's because aside from their passing offense and Michael Penix Jr., who I believe should have won the Heisman, rather. And hats off to the LSU quarterback that won. His name escapes me at the moment. But aside from Michael Penix Jr., if you take him away, and I get you say you could take any quarterback away, I think that if you take him away, Washington looks worse than Florida State would look in the same predicament. I think Florida State is a stronger team even without their starting quarterback than Washington would be without their starting quarterback. I go to the stats here. The points per game for Texas and Washington are pretty much the same. 36 Texas, Washington 37. And then you go to passing yards. Washington 349 passing yards averaging to Texas's 298. But then after that, Texas leads in every other stat. And it's somewhat significant. Rushing yards, which I know that's what Texas is going to want to do. They're going to want to run the football. They average 189 to Washington's 125. That's significant. They can still pass the ball. They're still averaging almost 300 yards. It's just that Washington's 350 and then their running game is at 125. But then you go to defense. Texas is at 17.5 points a game allowed, and Washington's at 23, which is not bad, especially considering college football. But the point difference is significant, especially when you come to a championship game, a tight game like this. And then passing yards that they've allowed, 257, Texas, to Washington's 273. And then rushing yards, 80 to Washington's 133. So right there, you can tell that Texas is going to be able to run the football on Washington, should be able to run the football on Washington effectively, and they're going to limit significantly limit Washington running the football, which means they make Washington one-dimensional, so all they really have to do is shut down Michael Penix in the passing game. That really does simplify it for a defense, and then also simplifies it for an offense, because they know if they can run the football, score, and continue to run the football to run the clock out, as opposed to passing, that plays in their favor. That really does play in their favor. So if you go off of that and the way that they've played, I watched Washington in the game when they beat Oregon, and even in both games actually when they beat Oregon, and also when they beat Washington State, which was a struggle for them. If it wasn't for Michael Penix Jr. helping them out to escape, that wasn't a win. That was an escape. They escaped with a win over Washington State, who they should have trounced. They should have demolished them. If it wasn't for that, it's hard for me to go with that. As long as Michael Penix Jr. is healthy, they got a shot. But now you're going up against a defense that's like, nah, no nonsense. You're going to have to try to run the football, and if you run the football, we're probably going to shut it down. So you're going to pass. And yes, Texas does give up passing yards, but in order to beat them, in terms of Texas being able to score points, they can score just as many points as Washington can score, but they can do it through the air and on the ground, as opposed to Washington just through the air. Texas has too many advantages here. It's hard for me to pick against them. I want Washington to win. I want a team that hasn't been there before, at least in my lifetime, to go and have a chance to win a national championship. I want Washington to win. I want Michigan versus Washington. But unfortunately, I got to pick Bama versus Texas. And I'll say Texas deserves to be in because they beat Bama, so they are ahead of them. But Bama doesn't deserve to be in. But like I said, we're here now. And unfortunately, like I said, I want Michigan and Washington, but I think it's going to be Bama and Texas in the national championship. Texas, to me, checks all the boxes in this game. They might not have average as many passing yards as Washington, but that's only by amount of 50, where the 50 is between 350 and 300. I could see if it was maybe 200 and 250 or something like that. But in college football, 300 passing yards is still, to me, is good as opposed to compared to 350. Yeah, that's a lot more. You're airing it out a lot more. But most of the time when you have to air it out so much more, it's because you don't have a running game. And the Texas offense is more balanced. 189 yards, that's close to 200 yards rushing. Close to 200 yards average rushing and right at 300 yards passing. That's well balanced. That's more balanced than Washington is. I'm going to go with the more well-balanced team. If they're better at stopping you in the run and in the pass than you are at stopping them, again, Texas checks all the boxes for a more well-balanced team. And it's like the only way that Washington seems like they can win this is to win a shootout. And they've won shootouts. But at some point, somebody's going to say, no, this is not going to be a shootout. You're going to have to beat us in a low-scoring game. You're going to have to beat us in a mid-scoring game. You're going to have to beat us other than with the passing game. What you got, Washington? I don't see it. I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I want Michael Penix Jr. to win, especially since he didn't win the Heisman. I want him to go on and compete for a national championship and win a national championship. That's who I want. I want Michael Penix Jr. as a black quarterback to win the championship. Yeah, I'm biased. I want him to win, but I don't think it's going to happen. Picking Texas to win this game. They're a more well-balanced team, and yeah, I will give it this. Washington has been in a tougher conference. I'll say that much. Washington's been in a tougher conference. Of course, Texas next year is going to the SEC. Washington will be going to the Big Ten, and things will be different then because of the Pac-12 collapsing. But right now, I got to go with Texas. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's Michigan and Washington, but I think it's going to be Bama and Texas. So that's what I got for the College Football National Championship. Hats off to all the other teams in bowl games. Hoping that they do well. Hoping that everybody enjoys those games. But we're not going to cover them this time. We're going to get on to the NFL. In the biggest news, first of all, we have to go with the Browns. Browns winning on Thursday Night Football against the Jets. Easy win for them and clinching a playoff spot. I am calling it right now. I'm pretty sure this will be one of those great predictions that not many people will watch and will know, but to the 1 to 4 people that might actually watch this, you heard it here first. It's either going to be the Ravens or the Browns representing the AFC in the Super Bowl, in my opinion. To me, the Browns are the only threat to the Ravens getting to the Super Bowl. Just how they've played. You see how nasty that defense is. After going through so many quarterbacks, now they got Joe Flacco, who's leading them, and it would be crazy, and I really wouldn't like it if Joe Flacco was a reason that Lamar Jackson didn't get to a Super Bowl. Really wouldn't like that. But that's why they play the game. You got to beat them. But, man, all the Browns needed was, even with Deshaun Watson being gone, is a competent quarterback. And I dare say, over the course of the games, and yeah, most teams couldn't plan for Flacco because they weren't ready for him. They didn't know he was going to be there. They didn't sign him till week 12. So you weren't prepared for him. You weren't game planning for him. But I would dare say it creates quarterback controversy because, yeah, you could say Deshaun Watson is younger and is the future, but with his injuries and the contract, like, how do you let go of Flacco when he's been playing this good? And you could say, oh, you never know what'll happen next year. Okay, fine, but you at least keep him around and make Deshaun Watson compete for the starting job. And that's if Deshaun Watson's healthy to go by the start of next season. But man, all they needed was a decent quarterback, and look what they've got in Flacco. And now, to me, look, all due respect to the Dolphins, I still think Tyreek Hill should be MVP of this league, even though he's not a quarterback, so they probably won't give it to him because he's not a quarterback. And hats off to the Dolphins, but I just don't think that, yes, they're facing the Ravens this week, but I don't see them as coming out of the AFC. I don't see them as strong enough to come out of the AFC and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I think they could get there one day, maybe even next year. But right now, to me, the two strongest teams in the AFC are the Ravens and the Browns in the same division. So I'm calling it right now. Ravens or Browns will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. It'd be crazy. Joe Flacco, the backup quarterback coming off of week 12 with that strong defensive running game, is representing the AFC with the Cleveland Browns in the Super Bowl, and they're in the Super Bowl without the $230 million guaranteed quarterback that they paid for. But we'll get to that more and more in a minute. And also we'll get to Russell Wilson when we get to the Broncos game. But we start with the Saturday game that's going to be on later on today, and it is a doozy. This will probably determine the number 2 seed, number 3 seed, if you will, perhaps, and it also depends on the Eagles because they are a game ahead. But we got Lions at Cowboys. It's hard to pick against the Cowboys at home. It really is. But you're going up against a team in the Lions that isn't playing around. This is not your dad's Lions, your grandpa's Lions. And they are for real, and this is not just because they're in a division now where they're weaker. The division is much weaker. No Aaron Rodgers. They did beat Aaron Rodgers 2 times last year, so it's not like they are a slouch and they're just getting by because they're in a weak division. In essence, they are like the Patriots. Like the Patriots benefit from a weak division for decades, at least a decade and a half. Sometimes the division was stronger, but at least a decade and a half, they benefited from a weak division and got to the playoffs almost automatically. But it wasn't like, once they got to the playoffs, they were slouches. And I think it's the same, the case is the same for the Lions here. 3rd in offense, 15th in defense, 5th in passing, 3rd in rushing. The best running back duo, to me, in the league. And they got a lot of flack for drafting Gibbs, I'm sorry. They got a lot of flack for drafting a running back in the first round, but look at what Montgomery and Gibbs are doing as a running back combo. the best running back combo in the league, and Dallas is going to have to contend with that. But with Dallas's 6th ranked defense, 6th ranked offense, I think that they can handle it. They're going to need more and more production from the running game, though. They cannot rely on Dak to just win this game. If they get behind 14 points and they're trying to pass to get back in the game, I don't see them. I can see them trying to come back, but even with the 15th ranked defense of the Lions, I think it'll be too much, because then Jared Goff and that offense, once they get the ball back, they'll sit on the ball, they'll run it out, run the clock out, they'll get the first down, whatever they need to do to end the game. So, but I do see the Cowboys winning this game. Number one, they're at home. It's hard to beat them at home. They do really good at home. And I think if Dak and that running game can get going, and then Dak gets the passing game going with CeeDee Lamb and company, and they get out ahead of the Lions. Now, yes, you don't want to count out the Lions in the shootout, especially because Jared Goff can do it. But I think that him going up against this Cowboys D is going to be a little bit too much. If the Cowboys get ahead, if the Cowboys are ahead by the end of the third quarter by at least 2 touchdowns, I think that the defense holds. But if the Lions are ahead, by 2 touchdowns at the end of the third quarter, then they take it. I don't think either team here is going to make that miraculous fourth quarter comeback, because I think the defenses will hold them, and then the opposing offenses in between scores, when they get the ball back, won't allow the other offense to get back on the field. So, who you got? I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think that they're slightly hungrier because they still want a chance. They're hoping that Seattle. They're hoping that Philly loses again, and so they would still have a shot at the division title. So they're hoping for that. So they're hungry. They're desperate. The Lions just won their division. Hats off to them. I predicted that they would last week, but they still want to make sure that they lock up that number 2 seed, and they very much can. And so I'm thinking that they're going to bring it. This is not a game for them to rest on their laurels. They want the number 2 seed. But I think that Dallas is going to win this game, and it will be tight. But I think Dallas will win this game, and I'm predicting the Cowboys win by 3. The Lions will try to come back late and make it a close game, but it'll be too little too late. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys slightly over the Lions for this game today. And then we get on to your Sunday games. And we first start off with the matchup that I was alluding to earlier, Dolphins at Ravens. This will pretty much, I would say, determine the number 1 seed. Of course, the Browns mathematically still could do it if the Ravens lose. And then the Dolphins were to lose again. But this is a tough matchup. This is a tough matchup for the Ravens. But you would think, okay, they were so lights out against the 49ers, and everybody considered the 49ers the best team in the league, even myself. Not because of Brock Purdy, but because of everything else around him. And look what they did. Look what they did to them. You're going up against a much more, I won't say a more high, because the Niners offense is high powered as well, because of all the weapons that they have. But the Dolphins offense is, I don't know if high powered is the right word, but just faster. The Niners are tough in terms of they got so many weapons, and they're physical, but Baltimore out physicaled them, and but the Dolphins are just pure speed, and that, of course, all Tyreek Hill. I think Jalen Waddle does need to be healthy for this game. If he's a scratch for this game, that's going to put a toll on Tyreek, because all you got to do is double, triple team him. He's not, completely invincible, even though he is fast and unbelievable. And then the running game has to be able to do something. They're 5th in rushing, the Dolphins are. They have to be able to do something against this Ravens defense. If they're not able to do anything, and then it's just all Tua to Tyreek, that's not going to win you the game. As good as Tyreek is, and as good as Tua has been, that alone is not going to win you the game. And then you go with Baltimore's offense, going up against the Dolphins D. I think Baltimore has the edge in that one. I think Baltimore on offense has the edge in that one. I wouldn't have said that maybe like 5 or 6 weeks ago, but they just seem like the Baltimore offense has been getting better and better. They will find ways to win, even against the toughest defenses. And even if they only score 2 touchdowns, they'll kick 6 or 7 field goals and beat you. Along with that, they'll score 14 points from touchdowns, and then it'll be 5 field goal kicks. They got the best kicker in the game still. So they'll beat you with all field goals if they need to. If they kick 4 field goals and they got 12 points, you probably not going to get more than 1 touchdown. So I'd say the Dolphins have to get out early and they have to stay ahead. That's the only way that they win. Dolphins get out early and they stay ahead. But I don't see that happening. I see the Ravens as the best team in the league right now. And I think the only team that can, it's a regular season game. But the only team that I think that can beat the Ravens and stop them from getting to the Super Bowl this year is the Cleveland Browns. So I'll pick the Ravens to win this game. Won't be by much, but I think they'll at least seal it by a field goal, picking the Ravens over the Dolphins here in Baltimore. All right, and so we get on to the rest of our Sunday games. We've got Patriots at Bills. Of course, Bills are on the rise, in the hunt. They want the Dolphins to lose so that they can possibly still have a shot at the division title. And of course, they still have another meeting with the Dolphins. So they want the Dolphins to lose, and they are not going to stumble in the process on the way there and overlook the Patriots. So there's not much to talk about in this game. I can't see any facet, any scenario where the Bills lose this game. If they do, shame on them. And, even if they still make the playoffs, I'm not going to pick them just out of spite. Because you ain't supposed to be losing to no Patriots, especially this late in the year, to a 4-11 team when you're supposed to be on the rise and you were 6-6, you're on 3 straight games and you're 9-6 and you're contending, and everybody's picking you in the media right now to be a dangerous team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs. Don't screw that up. So picking the Bills over the Patriots. Next, you got Falcons at Bears. I thought it was going to be the Falcons that were taking the division, but it looks like they've regressed and they're facing the Bears. And I'd say they keep going down because I think Justin Fields gets another win here. Even though the Bears are 6-9 and they're not a good team, the Falcons are hot, cold, and that's evident by their win and loss record at 7-8. It's like half the time the offense wants to play good, half the time it doesn't. And that's inconsistent. Now, the Bears are inconsistent too, so this is really a coin toss, but I'm just going to go with the Bears just because they have a better quarterback. That's really all it comes down to. I'll pick the Bears because they have a better quarterback. And, even though I've been hearing stuff about the Bears not really wanting him, and they probably should have got a quarterback in this past draft, but they chose to stick with him, and now they're regretting it. And so I don't know if he's going to be on the way out. But as of right now, he is a better quarterback. Like I said, I thought the Falcons were going to do better this year, but they're not. They're hot, cold at best, and I'm going to pick a better quarterback to beat them. So picking the Bears over the Falcons. Next, you got Titans at Texans. C.J. Stroud has been cleared to play, cleared the concussion protocol. He will be playing. And just as I predicted and wanting, the Texans, I believe, are going to win the division because I think that the Colts and I think that the Jaguars are going to fall off. And I think that the Texans will win the division. So hats off to C.J. Stroud. Hats off to the coach of the Texans, former defensive coordinator of the Niners, and being a defensive coach. I'm pretty sure he didn't have too many people thinking that he was going to win because the offense was, the biggest problem, and defense was a problem too. But for him to have this team at 8-7, as opposed to what I thought that they were going to be, and especially with a rookie quarterback, and this was probably going to be a rebuilding year after finally being done with the whole Deshaun Watson fiasco, and then firing Lovie Smith, which was wrong in my opinion in terms of how it happened. But now that they are 8-7, I think they're going to win the division. I think they're going to win the division. I don't see the Titans standing in their way. The Titans don't have anything that can stop them, even with Derrick Henry, even if he is fully healthy, which I never believed that Derrick Henry is fully healthy. I don't think he's been fully healthy in years. But he's not enough. He's not enough to make a big enough impact to just put the game on his back, and they don't have any other weapons to help out. You've got a young, inexperienced quarterback in Will Levis. It's just not a good recipe for the Titans. So picking the Texans with a returning C.J. Stroud to win over the Titans. Texans over Titans. Then we get to a big matchup here, Raiders versus Colts. This could pretty much probably determine either the division title for the Colts or possibly a playoff spot, or getting that 7th seed or 6th seed playoff spot, if you will. And then also it could determine the Raiders possibly getting in or dropping out. Of course, if the Raiders lose, they're out. 9 losses is going to eliminate you from the playoffs. But the way that this team has been playing under Antonio Pierce, beating the Chiefs on Christmas Day, and now having a shot at the playoffs. Even if the Raiders went out, they could still not make the playoffs. But I think that the biggest thing is Antonio Pierce is their head coach of the future. So as long as Mark Davis makes the right decision, I'll be good either way. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl, especially not with Aiden O'Connell. They've got to, and I get that. I wish we could have got Joe Flacco. I don't see why, when he was picked up in week 12, we had already changed regimes from Josh McDaniels well before that. So I don't see why we couldn't have tried to go get Joe Flacco. Imagine if Joe Flacco was a Raider right now, what the Raiders would be doing with that defense that they've got. And of course, the same thing about the Browns. So it's not a bad decision that he made, or that the Browns made in picking him up. And I just wish the Raiders would have got him before the Browns did. So, it's just rough with Aiden O'Connell. It's rough. But the Colts are so hot and cold. It's like 1 minute they look good, especially with their defense doing well, but then their defense drops the ball, or then Gardner Minshew, at one time was a starter with the Jaguars, and now the backup, and now is a starter because of Anthony Richardson being hurt for the Colts. And sometimes he looks good, but then other times he doesn't. Of course, everything is going to hinge on Jonathan Taylor, as long as he's healthy. And again, there have been reports, but I don't trust him. As long as he's healthy, and I believe he will play. He's faced the Raiders before. The Raiders held him out of the playoffs last year, actually. And that's actually the year before. I'm sorry, the year before, when the Raiders went to the playoffs. And I gotta go with my team. I think they'll do it this time. I still think it might be tough for them to make it into the playoffs, because even if, like I said, if they win out, they still need other teams ahead of them to lose in order for them to get into the playoffs. And there's so many teams that are ahead of them that could possibly win, and even if they win out, they could still not make the playoffs. But in this game, I'm picking them. I think that defense is going to terrorize Gardner Minshew. They're going to terrorize Gardner Minshew, and then even with Aiden O'Connell, they'll have to focus on the running game. Zamir White will probably lead the charge. I think Jacobs is still hurt. I hope we don't lose Jacobs. I would love to keep both of them, keep Jacobs and Zamir White as a running back tandem, because I think that makes us stronger, that makes us better. With only having one of them, we are not as strong as we could be, and not as strong as I believe we need to be moving forward. We need both of them. But at the moment, I don't know when Josh Jacobs is coming back. I don't trust injury reports until I actually see him on the field. And then, I think that with a little bit more offense from the running game, that the Colts defense, they talked about the Chiefs defense, how great they were, and look what the Raiders did to them. And I think the Raiders can do the same thing in the running game to the Colts. They'll have to do a little bit in the passing game. They're going to have to get the ball to Jacoby Myers, and Aiden's going to have to get it to Devontae Adams. That's not a consistent recipe for success in not having a completion in the second, third, and fourth quarter. So you're going to have to do more in this game, in the passing game. Maybe not much, but you're going to have to do more. I think they get a little bit more done, and the Raiders barely, and I mean barely, win this game. So picking the Raiders over the Colts. Then we get to the Panthers at the Jaguars. Now, Trevor Lawrence is still out for this game, even though you would think the Panthers are so bad. And then so the Jaguars are still going to be without their starting quarterback. And even without their starting quarterback, you're thinking, okay, the 2-13 Panthers are horrible. They're not going to beat the Jaguars. But I'm telling you, the Jaguars look pedestrian as I don't know what without their starting quarterback. I don't like it at all. I really don't. I don't like it at all. And this is weird. I'm probably the only one that's going to do this, but I'm picking the Panthers here. I think they rally, and I think that they somehow, even if it's like 3-0, like the Raiders lost to the Vikings, somehow the Panthers are going to win this game. They're going to pounce on the fact that the Jaguars don't have their starting quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And I think that they're going to, the main thing is, all they got to do now is then just stop the running game. They just stop and slow down NTM and stop the running game. And then you try to rely on the passing game, but you're relying on the backup quarterback. So you know it's going to be different. So I don't trust the Jaguars here. I think they lose this game. And I think Houston wins and eventually will win the division. So I got Jacksonville losing here, and a shocker. Losing to a 2-13 team. Stranger things have happened. But I think that with the Panthers defense, they put it together and slow down and almost shut down that Jaguars offense, and they barely get enough offense, even by a couple of field goals, and win this game. So picking the Panthers. I know nobody else is picking it, and I'm probably crazy. That's fine for picking that, because I'm probably the only one that's going to pick that. So it's a crazy pick. Okay, fine. That's me. I will take it on the chin if I'm wrong. Picking the Panthers over the Jaguars. Next, we got Rams at Giants. Rams are on the rise. They're showing their grit and their toughness. And right now they are in the playoff hunt. They are currently, if the playoffs ended today, the 6th seed. And so I think they keep rolling. The Giants are no match for them. If Matthew Stafford is healthy, that offense always has a chance, as well as Cooper Kupp. And then Nakua has been a great number 2 for them as a wide receiver. They just need consistent help from the running game, and they should be just fine. You know the defense is going to come to play. They're going to terrorize the Giants' offense. It's not even close. So Rams over Giants. Next, you've got Cardinals at Eagles. I got the Eagles winning this one. So they will then stay ahead in the NFC East and race for the division title. I don't think that they lock it up even with this win. They got to win the last game as well. But they win this one. I don't think the Cardinals are a match for them. I get it. The Cardinals beat the Cowboys in week 2 and whatnot, and they surprised everybody. But I don't see the Eagles have had way too many setbacks to me to let this one be also a setback. So I think that they get the win here. Better in every aspect, even at quarterback. With Kyler Murray coming off the injury, he just hasn't looked the same since coming back from injury. I get that he doesn't have anything around him, but he himself still just does not look like the same guy coming back from injury. Maybe with a full off season of rest and training and rehabilitation and all that, then he can get back in the groove once the next season starts. But right now he's not got it. He doesn't have it, and he doesn't have anything around him. So picking the Eagles, better in every aspect. Picking the Eagles over the Cardinals. Next, you got Saints at Buccaneers. This will probably lock up, in my opinion, the division title for the Bucs. I think they do get it done. Baker Mayfield right now is playing better than Derek Carr. And right now the team as a whole is playing better in terms of the running game and even the defense which I thought the Saints defense, they don't play like what they're touted to be. They don't play like what they're touted to be. So I just think that right now, when Baker's got his skill backing up his overconfidence, he can play. He can play. When his skill is not backing up his overconfidence, that's when he's in trouble. But when his skill is backing up his overconfidence, you know, he can play. And then he has a team behind him. Yeah, so I think the Bucks go ahead and win this division, and they will beat the Saints here. So picking the Buccaneers over the Saints. 49ers embarrassed last week against the Ravens. You know they'll be back into exact revenge. And exacting revenge on the Commanders is not saying much at a 4-11 team, but the Niners will win. Not much to talk about there. 49ers over Commanders. This one is a trip here, though. Two teams vying for a playoff spot. Two teams on the bubble, if you will. I think, but no, the Seahawks are just at the 7th seed. But I would still say 7th seed is on the bubble because you could easily fall out and another 8-17 take your place if they win out and you lose. But Steelers at Seahawks, and of course the Steelers are on the bubble and want to win themselves. I'm going to say the Seahawks win this one. Even with Drew Lock, I think the team as a whole is playing a lot better, and the Steelers just can't get the quarterback situation right. I'm pretty sure that they're going to start Mason Rudolph because he's been playing better than Kenny Pickett. And I do trust their defense to come and bring it, but I'm also trusting the Seahawks defense to come and bring it too. And so it's between Drew Lock and Mason Rudolph. I think that Drew Lock will have not an easy time, but an easier time with the Steelers defense than Mason Rudolph will have with the Seahawks defense. And the reason I say that is because I think the Seahawks will be able to, with the running game and passing game, sustain longer drives. They'll be able to sustain longer drives and tire out that Steelers D. As opposed to the Steelers offense and Mason Rudolph, unless he can just go all day to George Pickett, I don't see the Steelers offense sustaining long enough drives and wearing out the Seahawks defense to where they can eventually take them over. It's going to be a tight game. I don't see either team being dominant over the other team. I just think that's how the game goes. And I think the Seahawks are a little bit more hungrier than the Steelers are. So I think that the Seahawks win this game because they want to get into the playoffs. And I just think right now you need that rah-rah siskumba that Pete Carroll is over what Mike Tomlin is. And I think Mike Tomlin should be, I think he needs to go somewhere else. I think that, you know, in terms of what they're giving him to work with, it's just not fair. Because to me, if he had a decent quarterback and a decent, a better offense, what he's consistently had that defense doing, keeping them in the games, keeping them with winning records all the time, he deserves something better as far as an offense to complement what he does on defense as a defensive style coach. And so if the Steelers aren't going to do that, I mean, they're basically restricting him from being as good as he can be and returning them to prominence and like he had them at before. So I'm picking the Seahawks here over the Steelers just because I think the Steelers offense is going to drop the ball. I don't trust them. I trust, even it's strange to say with Drew Lock, but I trust Drew Lock more than I do Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph. So picking the Seahawks over the Steelers. Next, you've got Chargers at Broncos. The big story is Russell Wilson was benched, and then he comes out and talks about why first the Broncos try to get out ahead of it and say that the Broncos try to get out ahead of it and say that, well, we benched him because his contract was they tried to get out of it and say, well, we benched him because he wasn't playing well. We're just going to start Jarrett Stidham, and they didn't want to pay him the injury. If he were to get injured, they didn't want to pay him his injury insurance salary because he has an injury clause in his contract. And then it is revealed by Russell Wilson himself that later on that they came to him in the bye week after they had beat the Chiefs. And he said that the Broncos came to him and they told him about, we don't like your contract. Of course, this is not their contract. This is the contract that he got from Seattle. And so when they traded for him, Broncos took on that contract, but they were hoping that he was going to be the Russell Wilson of old. But you should have known that the fact that Seattle was getting rid of him, that he wasn't the Russell Wilson of old anymore. So I don't know what you thought you were going to get. But I don't think that was a smart move if you weren't willing to take on the contract. You know what I said, how Russell Wilson ain't been the same since, somebody else was in his life. So, in a way, I feel bad for Russell Wilson. In a way, to me, he brought this a lot on himself with his lifestyle change and, his difference of personality and, changing the way he did as a person. And, it wasn't anything with, Sean Payton or the contract and all that stuff. Nobody was saying anything about that, last year when he wasn't with the team and had his own parking space and had his own office in the stadium and all that stuff. And, when he was doing all of that, that had nothing to do with Sean Payton because Sean Payton wasn't there yet. So you go from that, then you go to this part, and now they're dropping a hammer on him because they don't like what he's doing or like how he's performing, and now they don't want to pay him because they don't think he's worth it, because if he was worth it, then they'd be paying him. Now, even though he won 3 straight games and they come, after the bye week, and then they lose again, and they're just not seeing it, and Sean Payton's on the sideline yelling at him. I think because of the new regime of ownership, remember the new regime of ownership didn't trade for Russell Wilson. So they might have authorized it, but that's not what he wanted. That's what they wanted. They gave Nathaniel Hackett what he wanted, and they were like, okay, we'll let you do it. But I think that the Broncos front office or new ownership, they side with Sean Payton over Russell Wilson because they're like, okay, Russell Wilson wasn't doing what he's supposed to do last year. It doesn't really seem like he's doing what he's supposed to do this year, and we've got a head coach who is better than the head coach that we had last year. So we'll go with the head coach. I'm just thinking that's what they're thinking. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong. So, like I said, in that regard, I don't feel bad for Russell Wilson because had he not been doing the antics that he was doing last year, I don't think that this year would have mattered in terms of, we don't like your contract and all this stuff. If he was playing hard and he was playing well and he was about the team last year and he had his head in the game instead of in his own office, then he would have been, this I don't think would matter. But you combine last year with what's going on this year, and when they approach him, he's like, no, I'm not changing my contract. And so they're like, okay, well, we don't think it's worth it. Because if he gets injured, then he gets all this money. And, he's not playing to the caliber that they want. And they're saying, well, we gave you an offensive coach now who has proven himself. And, he's won at the highest level. Just because he has doesn't mean he's right for the job, though. I will say that. But I don't really see this as a fault of all on Russell Wilson or all on the Broncos. I think they both made some bad mistakes in this deal, in this joint marriage, if you will. But nonetheless, Jarrett Stidham's going to start, and with him having his first start this season, and then Easton Stick having 2 starts under his belt for the Chargers, I'm going to pick the Chargers over the Broncos. As simple as that. Next, we have Bengals at Chiefs. I think Chiefs get back on the ball here. They'll win this game. I even when they have goofs and have blunders, the Chiefs, it's hard for me to see them consistently doing that. I just think that they're a good enough team to where they'll consistently do that, and they'll probably still win the division, but they're going to have a tough time against this Bengals team who is also on the bubble and is hungry and is trying to get into the playoffs. So I think that they'll barely win, but Jake Browning and that Cincinnati Bengals team is going to be hungry, and they are going to be wanting to beat the Chiefs, and especially with Jamar Chase talking his talk It should be a nice little mini war there. But I still just think overall the Chiefs are a better team with their offense and their defense. They really dropped the ball on Christmas Day, and I'm fine with that because they just got outplayed on certain sides of the ball. And but I think they'll rebound against the Bengals, barely beating the Bengals. So picking the Chiefs over the Bengals. If I'm wrong, I would not be disappointed. And then Sunday night, I don't know why they thought this was going to be a good matchup, even if the starting quarterbacks were both there, and Jordan Love and Kirk Cousins. I don't know why they thought this was going to be a good Sunday night football matchup, but you got Packers and Vikings, two teams that could still possibly make the playoffs, but it's looking very slim as the season comes to an end. I will pick the Packers here just because I trust Jordan Love over whoever they throw out there for the Vikings at quarterback. It was going to be Nick Mullins and replaced for Josh Jacobs, but he didn't play good last week, so now they're going with Hall, and it's too much of a carousel. I'm going to go with the more stable quarterback, the guy who's been the quarterback all year for his team, and even if his team is struggling, the consistency of him, and they know how he plays, so they know how to complement him. They know how to enhance his strengths as a team and cover his weaknesses. And when you pretty much don't know what you're getting at quarterback on the opposite side, on the opposite team, then that is pretty much it for the Vikings. So I'm picking the Packers over the Vikings. That's your Sunday night football matchup, and that's it. There is no Monday night football matchup this week. So that will conclude our podcast here, our live stream. I appreciate all my subscribers. I appreciate those for tuning in. Please continue to like, comment, and share and subscribe as we continue to grow this channel. I appreciate all those who just love sports talk, and that's what we're doing here. We'll get to the whole entertainment value thing as we continue to grow and continue to get more resources for this channel. But until next time, believe until you stop breathing. This is DeValian with Scout Team Sports. We'll see you next week.